Hello ladies and gentlemen and everyone beyond. I am BabyNoobCakes and this is PlayStation Plus free game reviews. And in this episode, we're going to be taking a look at one of the July 2020 free games, Rise of the Tomb Raider. The second in the rebooted trilogy from Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix, exploring the origins of the British temple thief, Lara Croft. Fun fact, the first of which was also a PlayStation Plus game back in March of 2013. But now, let's see how this game stacks up and attempt to answer the question, as one of the free games of the month, was it worth it? Mechanics. There are far too many moving pieces in this game to go over all of them. You explore, you collect,
an arrowhead.
you hunt. You do all of this in order to upgrade your weapons and tools to better fight off the bad guys with guns. In order to do all of these things, you can put your platforming skills to use, to climb and scale the highly vertical environment to find hiding places high off the ground. Or you can kick your solid snake skills into high gear and spend your time sneaking around in the grass and behind cover to avoid being seen, to get up close and personal to use stealth kills. But as I'll talk about later, you can be choosy about which approach you take, and which things you upgrade depending on which are your favorites to use. Which means if you don't have a lot of time to play, you can still rush through and you'll still be fine to finish the game with or without all of the exploration and crafting. Art style. Lara looks great. Her hair blows in the wind, and she'll even squeeze the water out of it after swimming through an underwater cave. The other characters, though, are not quite as well detailed, but they are by no means bad looking. It feels as if the art team focused a bit more on the environments, which admittedly is what you spend a lot more time looking at. And with all of the wind and snow, you'll probably end up feeling as cold as Lara does in the game. And on top of that, there are also warmer locales to find and explore as well. Sound. To complement the visuals of the game, the snowy woods are full of various sound effects, like the wind blowing over the peaks of the mountains, the chirps and howls of wild animals in the distance. Or at least, hopefully, they're far away from you. And the voices of the characters are all believable and well recorded and balanced.
We seem to be making a habit of saving each other.
Thanks. I'm glad you're okay. Is that the way through?
Yes.
But as for the actual content of the dialogue, well, we'll get to that later on.
Can't get rid of me so easily. I still need some answers.
And there's no time to waste.
Replayability. Rise of the Tomb Raider will take you somewhere between 13 and 21 hours to beat, which is a pretty wide margin that's really based off of how you want to approach and play this game. What's your playstyle? Do you rush through games without ever touching the side quests, or do you scour every last inch of wilderness for every single possible pickup and secret? I think that this range really shows off exactly how much content there is hidden away in this game. It also shows off how well the game strikes a strong balance between mandatory missions and offering, but not requiring, exploration as part of gameplay. Narrative. Rise of the Tomb Raider sees Lara tracking down another ancient lost city, and more specifically, an ancient lost artifact called the Divine Source, said to contain the secret of immortality. Unfortunate for her, though, is that she finds there is another group, an ancient order called Trinity, also after the Source, and they have an army at their disposal. Lara has to fight her way through waves of grunts on her quest to beat them to the treasure. Along the way, you will also be following the trail of notes and letters left behind, mainly by two people from centuries in the past. The first of these people is an unnamed prophet, and the second, a man who hunted him, who was also a member of Trinity. Hey, I said they were old. Basically, just think Assassin's Creed and the Templars. And just as Trinity has persisted into the modern day, there are followers of the Prophet living in the remote village in the Siberian mountains you find yourself in. Who will be the first to find the source, and who will end up claiming it for their own? It's up to you and Lara to determine how this story turns out.
I'm not your enemy. That remains to be seen.
My opinion. Like I said before, the first rebooted Tomb Raider was free back on the PS3, and I loved playing through that game. The story and characters were very down to earth, but they were set in a fantastical, unbelievable situation. The characters all had a lot of charm, and the story was believable. Well, as believable as can be when strange magics and supernatural spirits are involved. I guess it was more the actions and motivations of the characters that I believed more. The other part of the original that I really liked was that, while it was obviously more based on the Uncharted series of games than it was based on the previous Tomb Raider games from the 90s, it did enough to keep itself separate from Nathan Drake, and it had its own signature style. But at this point, you might be asking yourself, why is he giving us his opinions on the first rebooted game and not the sequel that he's been talking about up to this point? Well, it's because Rise seems to ditch a lot of the aspects that made it so unique, at least as far as storytelling and characters go. In Rise, Lara becomes an obsessed treasure hunter with very few other character traits, and a pretty single-minded approach to her goals. Apparently, her experiences in the first game taught her to be distant and boring. While I'll admit that I really don't remember much about the bad guys from the first game, in Rise, they might as well just replace the antagonist's dialogue with, "I am bad guy. I feel justified in doing evil things. You, the player, are supposed to hate me."
I expected you to see. You must know what is at stake with this operation.
Yes, but no.
The bad guy here is just so bland and boring and one note.
Go easy.
Also, in the opening sections of the game, you are placed in extremely linear corridors with action set pieces that pose very little challenge and are extremely reminiscent of Uncharted. And the Trinity Prophet storyline felt ripped right out of Assassin's Creed. It also feels like the story tries to be super mysterious, but as I was playing through, I felt like I could guess every turn that it was about to take, and I was playing in 100% style, looking for every note and hint that I could find, which explains why I was getting hints about the storyline. It still just felt really predictable. I also have a few complaints about the AI in the game. The wild animals seemed to know exactly when you were looking at them and would go apeshit every time you did, making it more difficult to go hunting than it was in the first game. It also seemed like the soldiers you were fighting against almost didn't have the ability to kill you, which may have been the fact that I was playing on normal, so that's a fixable aspect of the game. Just turn up the difficulty. In the first game, Lara had compassion for her lost friends, and she was challenged by not only the dangerous and wild nature of the island she was stranded on, but also the brutality of the people she was fighting. It felt like everything was out to kill you, and there were a whole lot of opportunities for you to die, which made succeeding all the more sweet. In the second game, you were always so very in control of your situation. I didn't feel like I was surviving. It almost felt more like I was just doing a job or a chore. Lara has become an action hero like Nathan Drake, but without any of the wit or charm. I feel like her character was so much better and stronger, as most characters do, when there were actual adversities for her to conquer. It shares a lot of gameplay mechanics with the first game in the series, and isn't completely awful, don't get me wrong. I think I just enjoyed the overall experience of the first game a lot more than this second installment of the trilogy. And to my complaint about the game being too linear, it does quickly open up into a rich, explorable world, similar to Tomb Raider 1. And I really did have a lot of fun playing through this time, because I liked playing the first game. The gameplay is very, very similar, and I enjoyed the gameplay and the story of the first one. It's just, when it came to the story of this sequel, I always had the first one in the back of my mind. But that's not to say that I didn't find parts of the game that I found enjoyable. The two best parts of the game by far is that this is the fastest way to travel over flat ground, and whenever you climb, if you mash the buttons hard enough, you get to do this. This is the best game ever. This is the best. This made it all worth it. Was it worth it? If you were a fan of the first game of the rebooted Tomb Raider franchise, or even if you weren't, since this game's plot barely even mentions or references the previous one. If you are a fan of adventure/stealth third-person action games, and especially if you're a fan of the Uncharted series, I think you're going to get a lot out of this game. And with this being the 20th anniversary expansion of the game, you even end up with a bunch of DLC that you didn't get with the main game if you bought it day one. So even if you haven't played since the original release of this game, it might be a reason to come back out and try it again. And while I had loads of complaints, I really did have fun playing through this game, so I'm gonna say it was worth it. There's a lot of content to explore, and I feel like this game is going to appeal to a lot of people. So, like I said, this one is worth it. But maybe that's for you to decide. Whether you agree or disagree with my judgment, get at me in the comments. Let me know what you think. And let's discuss if this month's games were worth it or not. Also, don't forget to go to the PlayStation Store and download your free games every month. Because hey, they're free. And sometimes, you'll end up with a few gems. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, because I take a look at the PS Plus free games every month. But for now, I'll catch you later.